Louise Palanker. She indicated that she met the Arvizos or the Arvizo children actually, when they attended comedy camp at the Laugh Factory in Hollywood, CA. She also met Janet Arvizo and David Arvizo during that time. She indicated that she saw more of David Arvizo than she did of Janet. My impression of this witness is that she was totally taken in by the Arvizos in the sense that they became close friends and that she, in some way, felt sorry for them because they appeared to be a needy family. In fact, she related the same story that Fritz Coleman had related about bringing Christmas gifts to the Arvizos in December 1999. This was prior to Gavin's contracting cancer, and she also indicated that the cost of those Christmas gifts was probably around $500 to $600. She indicated that they had bought a microwave and some other things for the family like toys for the kids. When Gavin contracted cancer, this was quite a traumatic experience, of course, for Janet, and she called Louise to inform her that Gavin had cancer. It was sometime after this, when Gavin was actually in his cancer recovery, that Louise decided on her own. Janet had apparently never asked her for any money, that the family needed some money, and she gave $10,000 to the Arvizos. Actually, I think she gave the check to David Arvizo, but the check was made out to Janet Arvizo. After this initial donation of $10,000, Louise Palanker indicated that David immediately started asking for more money, and it was like a month later that Louise Palanker wrote out another $10,000 check. This time the check was written out to David Arvizo because this had to do with gift tax deductions for Louise Palanker. David got another $10,000, and Louise had indicated that she had no strings attached with any of this money and that they could do whatever they wanted to do with the money. The question of the Arvizos' relationship with George Lopez came up, and at some point in time there was a falling out between George Lopez and the Arvizos. Apparently David Arvizo had stated that Gavin had left a wallet at George and Ann Lopez's house and that he needed to get the wallet back. He stated, according to Louise Palanker, that there was $300 in the wallet. Well, George Lopez apparently got terribly upset when he found a wallet in his house, but the wallet only had $3 in it. So, apparently, George Lopez felt that he was being tricked by David Arvizo into thinking that there was more money in the wallet than there actually was. Now the wallet was Gavin's wallet, but I don't know whether Gavin ever claimed that there was $300 in the wallet. But anyway, at one point after the second fundraiser that Louise Palanker had participated in at the Laugh Factory, David Arvizo apparently went to George Lopez to try to retrieve the wallet and $300 and got terribly upset at him and actually threw the fundraiser money at George Lopez and said that he didn't need his money. Actually, in the end, I guess David Arvizo picked the money up and put it back in his pocket and took it anyway. From this time on, there was a real falling out between George Lopez and the Arvizos, and especially because of David, according to Louise Palanker. Janet Arvizo called Louise Palanker after the Bashir video had been broadcast and was terribly upset because she was indicating to Louise that she was being held hostage, or implying that she was being held hostage, and was really frightened. This caused some concern for Louise Palanker, and she immediately called her lawyer. Now, why she called her lawyer, I'm not sure. If there was really any danger involved here, she probably should have called the police. But anyway, she indicated that she called her lawyer. Louise indicated that she's still friends with the Arvizos and that she thinks that Gavin is an honest boy. My overall impression of Louise Palanker is that she's a very kind, warm-hearted, giving person, and that there could be some naivety on her part, I guess, in all of this. I'm not sure, and there will have to be some more testimony before everything is cleared up, but it just seems to me like Louise Palanker is a person that could be easily taken in by somebody who is, let's say, out to get something. Louise indicated that she wasn't aware of and didn't know anything about the J.C. Penney case. She indicated that she did know that somebody with the Arvizos had called Jay Leno like 3 times and left messages on his answering machine. Jay Leno apparently talked to Louise Palanker and asked her to tell these people to stop calling him on the phone. There was some question that was discussed about the children being coached, and these were all related to statements that Louise Palanker had made to the sheriff's department. There was some kind of skepticism, or something, on Louise's part when she had asked the Arvizo children what they had received for Christmas, and Star Arvizo made some comment to the effect that, well, we just received love, we just got love for Christmas. Louise indicated that she had thought that this sounded like it was the kind of comment that would be coached by the parents. Louise felt that Janet Arvizo was just reaching out when describing Janet's relationship with other celebrities, or whatever. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that through other testimony. The defense asked Louise about several statements that she had made to the sheriff's department in a previous interview, and one of those statements was that Louise said Janet had a hostage syndrome. Louise indicated that she felt that Janet had this hostage syndrome since the age of 16 because it was related to the fact that Janet was married to David Arvizo at age 16. So when you get married that young, I could imagine that maybe if things weren't going well in a marriage, or whatever, that Janet could feel like she was a hostage. This may influence her feelings about how she feels in other relationships, such as the relationship with Michael Jackson, meaning that when things go wrong it turns into a hostage situation in her mind. George Lopez. George Lopez is a comedian and sometime actor. George became acquainted with the Arvizos when they attended the comedy classes at the Laugh Factory. George Lopez worked specifically with the Arvizos while they were attending the comedy club, which, as I've mentioned before, was a club organized by Jamie Masada for disadvantaged young folks. Anyway, George indicated that, in most of his testimony, George was complaining about David Arvizo. He indicated that after Gavin became ill with cancer, David was the only adult Arvizo around. Janet Arvizo was apparently working, but he never asked any questions as to where she was, but he was a little bit surprised that she never showed up at the hospital anytime during Gavin's illness. George said that he never saw Janet in the hospital during Gavin's illness at all. But he did say that from the very beginning David would pester him constantly about needing money. He requested that George Lopez organize a fundraiser for Gavin and George agreed to assist with organizing a fundraiser. He apparently had done this quite often for other needy children and had been involved with other fundraisers. David was insistent about the fundraiser to the point where George Lopez actually became very irritated about the fact that David seemed to want money all the time. There was one instance that George Lopez related that had to do with David and Gavin going with him on an outing one day to the mall, and, I believe, that same day George treated them to lunch. But anyway, Gavin was apparently running from store to store and David would tell George Lopez that, boy, Gavin sure would like this or that, and kind of inferred that George Lopez should buy something for Gavin. George was a little bit irritated that David seemed to stay in the background and just let Gavin go wild and didn't try to rein him in and tell him that you don't go around asking people for gifts and things like that. David just sort of let Gavin do his own thing like any young 10 or 11-year-old would do in asking for gifts. So, George purchased a few items for him. There were other times that George indicated that David would ask him for money and George would say, well, okay, here's $20, $40, $80 or whatever he had in his wallet. George thinks that there was probably about $400 or so that he actually gave to David throughout his several requests for money. The real event that there was another instance where David, on this same day of the mall outing where everybody went shopping, that David Arvizo and Gavin came back to the Lopez's house in Sherman Oaks, CA to use the restroom or whatever and then left. But, it was discovered later that Gavin had left his wallet in the Lopez's living room on the fireplace mantle. So when George Lopez found it there he looked in the wallet and saw that there was $50 in the wallet. He told his wife Ann about it. I think it was Ann that eventually called David Arvizo and said that they had found this wallet and they wound up sending the wallet back to the Arvizos by Federal Express, I believe to David. If I'm getting the story straight, David then called George Lopez and said that they received the wallet back, but there was only $50 in the wallet and that Gavin had actually had $300 in the wallet and David wanted all of the money back. Well, George Lopez knew for certain that there was only $50 in the wallet and that was the end of the story. He didn't agree to send any more money to David. Later on George Lopez was speaking with Jamie Masada and found out that Jamie Masada actually paid David Arvizo $300 because David was telling Jamie Masada that George Lopez had stolen $300 from Gavin. George was a little miffed when he found out that Jamie Masada actually paid the $300 because George knew for certain that there was not $300 in the wallet. Jamie Masada said that he paid that amount just simply to keep the peace and make the problem go away. During all this time Ann Lopez was in the process of organizing a fundraiser for Gavin and David Arvizo kept asking George when the fundraiser was going to take place and this kind of thing. He actually confronted George Lopez after his work one day and said, well, when is the fundraiser going to take place? And, how much is it going to be? And all that kind of stuff. At that point George Lopez said that it wasn't going to happen and that there wasn't going to be any fundraiser. At this time he was just totally irritated with David Arvizo and also, as a result of something that David had said to George's wife Ann, George just simply said now that there would not be any fundraiser. Ann Lopez, the wife of George Lopez. She also related the same story about the $300 that Jamie Masada paid to David as a result of the false claim that George Lopez had stolen money from Gavin. David had actually called, well, okay. Ann Lopez, as I mentioned earlier, was actively trying to organize a fundraiser for the Arvizos at another comedy club called the Ice House in Pasadena, CA. She was trying to line up comedians to come to the fundraiser and all that kind of stuff, but she said that every other day, at least, David Arvizo would call her and try to find out when the fundraiser was to take place, how much money it was going to raise and all of that. Note. And Lopez told David that fundraiser proceeds would go to pay bills directly and not to him to spend. When Anne couldn't really give him an accurate answer, he got very upset with her, swore at her and called her a mother f*** king bitch and some other things that George Lopez later found out about. It was from that point on that the relationship between the Arvizos and the Lopezes ended, and this was about, I believe, the year 2000. I don't remember the exact month. Anne Lopez indicated that she never knew or heard about Janet Arvizos' lawsuit against J.C. Penney Company, and she said that their relationship with the Arvizos seemed to just kind of disappear or go away when the Arvizos became friendlier with Michael Jackson. It was like, okay, we're friends with Michael now and we don't really need your time or money, or whatever anymore, because we're now friends with Michael Jackson. Jamie Masada. Jamie Masada is the owner of the Laugh Factory in Los Angeles, and he befriended the Arvizos when the Arvizo children were asked to participate in the comedy camp that the Laugh Factory sponsors every summer for approximately 15 weeks or something like that. The Arvizo children graduated from the comedy camp, and 6 weeks later Jamie Masada got a frantic phone call from Janet Arvizo indicating that Gavin had contracted cancer. My impression of Jamie Masada was that he is a very caring person. He cared about people, how they felt, and what was happening to them. I think that what he did for the Arvizos was primarily done on his own initiative. As far as raising money and everything else to help Gavin out in whatever way he could, I think, was because he truly felt that he could empathize with Gavin Arvizo during his illness. When Janet had informed him that he had contracted cancer, one of the first things that Jamie Masada did was visit Gavin in the hospital, and he visited Gavin several times after that while he was in the hospital. Here's some of the personal background history on Jamie Masada. He's a comedian and he has helped to launch the careers of a lot of other comedians in the Los Angeles area. There are many of these comedians that participate on a regular basis in the Laugh Factory activities. Jamie Masada was 16 years old in 1979, I believe, when he dreamt up the concept of the Laugh Factory with the intent of giving comedians a place to show what they could do and to actually earn some money for being comedians. He really took an interest in helping comedians because they didn't have any other forum to really express their talent or express their needs as far as being paid for what they do. So, based on how the Laugh Factory was started, it's fairly easy to see how Jamie Masada could get involved with the personal lives of the Arvizos during the time that Gavin was ill. Jamie Masada organized a blood drive for Gavin because Gavin had a special type of blood, and he made sure that it was widely publicized that blood was required, and he was a mover and shaker, in the sense that he made it known to those who could spread the word that the blood was needed. He also helped organize 2 fundraisers that were held at the Laugh Factory, and he indicated more than once that David Arvizo was always asking for money, always hounding him about getting more financial assistance, whatever, in order to make ends meet and help pay for Gavin's recuperation. When Michael Jackson gave the Arvizos a vehicle to use, David Arvizo brought it to the Laugh Factory and insisted that Jamie Masada come out and take a look at the vehicle that Michael Jackson had given them. David was just really proud of the fact that he had this vehicle, and Jamie Masada thought that it was great and it was nice that Michael Jackson could do that. Jamie Masada and the Arvizos, David Arvizo in particular, had a falling out when the issue of the wallet with the $300 came up. And the way that Jamie Masada explained it, he eventually wrote out a check to David Arvizo for $350. He indicated that David Arvizo was trying to get Gavin to tell Jamie Masada that, yes indeed, he did leave the wallet at George Lopez's house, and that, yes, the wallet had $350. According to Jamie Masada, Gavin wasn't buying into this apparent scam that David was trying to organize, and Gavin basically refused to go along with confirming that he ever actually had that much money in his wallet that was left at George Lopez's house. But to make peace, Jamie Masada simply wrote out the $350 check to David Arvizo and let it go at that. But after that particular point in time, Jamie Masada really didn't respect David Arvizo much anymore. The subject came up as to how instrumental Jamie Masada was in getting Michael Jackson to call Gavin at the hospital, and Jamie Masada didn't really take any direct credit for this himself. He indicated that he had talked to a lot of celebrities and comedians and told them about Gavin's condition. He didn't really know whether it was because of his efforts or because Michael just simply felt compassionate and wanted to call Gavin at the hospital. He just wasn't sure how this all came about. Michael of course did eventually call Gavin and talked to him and brought gifts or had gifts brought to Gavin at the hospital. Jamie Masada indicated that he had been interviewed by someone after the Bashir video documentary was aired, and that he was pretty much outraged at the fact that Bashir could produce such a video where he actually identified the Arvizo children and showed their faces. As a result, Bashir's actions produced all of this embarrassment and concern by the Arvizos and by Gavin, in particular, about the implications of the Bashir video. Jamie Masada indicated that he felt sorry for Gavin because kids at school were calling him a faggot and all that because of what happened as a result of the Bashir video. He indicated that at one time after the Bashir documentary Janet Arvizo had called him in a panic because she felt that she was being held hostage at Neverland Ranch and she was trying to explain all of this to Jamie Masada on the phone. Jamie Masada felt compassion again for Janet's condition, I guess, and decided to introduce the Arvizos to his attorney who was Bill Dickerman. This is how the initial contact between the Arvizos and Bill Dickerman occurred. So Bill Dickerman was Jamie Masada's attorney. From then on Jamie had suggested that the Arvizos talk to Bill Dickerman directly, because he didn't feel that it was right for Gavin's face to be shown on TV and all of that. The defense made a big point out of all of this by indicating that at no time during any of these conversations with an attorney, or anyone else, was the police department ever called. I think Jamie indicated that he was discussing, or considering, this possibility at one time, but the police were never called. Jamie indicated that in order to get Gavin out of the limelight, and I may be paraphrasing a lot of this, or putting together a lot of this based on intuition, but it sounded like if the Arvizos, according to Jamie Masada, needed money as a result of the fallout from the Bashir video that Jamie Masada said he could get the money. He never indicated who he could get the money from but that he could write a check to Janet for whatever she needed. Now all along, Jamie Masada has been claiming that Janet personally never asked him for money. It was always David Arvizo that asked for money. In fact, Jamie indicated that Janet said to him that she really needed friends at this point, but she really didn't need the money. Jamie indicated that at one point he actually gave money to the Arvizos to help get Gavin into a private school because of the name calling and everything that Gavin was having to endure at school. But through all of this testimony, Jamie Masada is pretty much indicating that, he was a person who liked to help disadvantaged people and really felt that the Arvizos were getting a raw deal and wanted to help them out in whatever way he could without any direct requests from Janet for money. He did say that he got direct requests from David Arvizo quite frequently for money. He indicated that he was aware that Bill Dickerman, his attorney, had eventually introduced the Arvizos to Larry Feldman, another attorney. My understanding is that Larry Feldman had something to do with the prosecution of Michael Jackson in the early 1990s in a separate case having to do with child abuse. I'm sure this is going to come out further on in the testimony as time goes on. The defense was suggesting that the prosecution only asked Jamie Masada for cancelled checks that Jamie had sent to David Arvizo and not to the other Arvizos. Now whether this is true or not, I have no idea, but other than that the implication is that Jamie Masada wasn't providing all of the information he had about money he had sent to the Arvizos and that the prosecution had only asked for cancelled checks going to David Arvizo. As far as Louise Palanker is concerned, Jamie did have knowledge that Louise had given the Arvizos money and that he had indicated that she was a wealthy person. What he meant by that I don't have any particular knowledge. He did indicate that he was not really a fan of Louise Palanker's and that he really didn't think she had a whole lot of comedic talent. He said that he had actually mentioned that to Louise Palanker and told her that he didn't think she was very funny and went on to say that he thought Tom Mesereau was funnier than Louise Palanker. And that got a big laugh out of the courtroom.